beautiful message number 2 for today. I'm using a freckle filter. I like it. It reminds me of my grandma. She had skin like that. But anyway, so I've been talking to a lot of kids, teens, I would say, about the typical standard, the talk with their parents, because I'm 40 in a few months. A lot of people my age have preteens now, and they're in the zone of, all right, well, I think I better have the talk. So I just at the end of the day, you got to sit down and figure out what you are comfortable talking to your kid about at their age, and if your kid's even mature enough to handle it. That's the biggest question, because it doesn't really matter that they're a preteen if they're still very much in their baby phase and they're not really interested in dating, and they still look at people when they kiss like ew. They're probably not mature enough to sit and really properly listen to you, and that's what I mean. At the end of the day, they're going to giggle, they're going to ask ridiculous questions, they're going to try to make you uncomfortable. It's just a part of being a teenager and the nature of the talk in general. So expect immaturity when you're talking to your kids about it. When you say words, they're going to chuckle. They're kids, okay? It's funny words. It's a funny thing to think about. They understand it a little bit, but they don't really know. At the end of the day, it's something taboo that they're not supposed to talk about or do, and they hear this. Our kids are a lot more savvy to things than we expect, a lot earlier than we expect them to be, and that's just the nature of the world they live in, with being so exposed to things so early. A lot of these kids are advancing far earlier than we did because of that exposure. I hate people when they just drive by and grill you, like, hi. Anyway, get distracted. So, let me back up. Like I said, importantly, you have to understand the level of maturity when you're talking about this. Yes, they aren't going to be ready for the talk when you give it to them, and some of these kids, like as I was saying, are far more exposed than we were. And I had grown up in a time where it was like on the cusp of having those rules and being really strict about what they aired on TV, but also we're playing a bit and putting new things out. Like when I was a kid, now I am for the LGBTQ. I'm just showing the evolution of how far back I went, but no gay couples were on TV. They were very rude and said a lot of derogatory things, and it was okay, and nobody corrected that. You had very limited sex scenes and what you could put on the TV, so we did have less access to things than our kids do. They have access to porn in ways that you're not ready to, even as a parent, to hear about how these kids are doing it. So it's like we're still thinking like we were as a kid, like they're innocent, and they are. I'm not saying that your kids are sexual deviants or anything like that, but they are far more exposed to a lot more than we even realize. But, teenagers do what teenagers do, especially preteens. They're going to look at stuff, okay? They're going to go to someone's house and they're going to find porn and they're going to have questions, only they don't feel like it's comfortable, and most of the time kids don't feel comfortable broaching this subject with their parents. So if you still have young ones yet, I would think about that. Think about how you can make it so that your kid, maybe they hear about a drug at school and they get in the car, and wouldn't you rather they ask you the question and you can be honest with them, like, Mom, my friend said he tried weed. What is weed and what does it do to you? That's an average, natural question, and a lot of parents shut it down immediately because we're not going to talk about that. You're not going to hang out with that person. They're a bad influence. And yes, as a parent, I would be thinking those things. but you have to think like a child. The minute you restrict with judgment, they're not going to respect you anymore because you're judging someone that you don't even know. And granted, you are the parent. It is a drug. You want to keep your kids safe, and you have every right to feel some type of way about what your kid is exposed to. But think about when you were a kid, when your parents told you you couldn't date someone or that you couldn't be friends with someone. The minute that came out of their mouth, all you wanted to do was be with that person or do that thing that you weren't allowed to do. So instead of attacking somebody for being a bad influence on your kid, when really your kid's going to be exposed to it one way or another, so look at it as, okay, the contact has been made and my kid felt comfortable to come to me. I need to honor and respect that and protect that so that they always come to me for other things, big or small. So you don't ever want to go on the attack. You don't always want to be like, well, why weren't you using your head? What are you even thinking? Why are you hanging out with people like that? Because think about when you were a kid and you had friends and they were all doing something. If you were the one in the group that said, I'm not going to do that, you're probably finding yourself alone a lot of the times, and it's really hard for kids to say no. And you do want to teach your kid to be strong and adamant, but you have to understand the psychology to help usher them to the right response. So if your kid says, hey, my friend tried weed, what is weed and what does it do to you? Well, weed is a drug grown in the ground. It was used by Native Americans for practices, and somehow in between all of that, somebody found out that if you smoke it, it does funny things to you. It can make you lazy, it makes you eat, it makes you not be able to see right, it makes you a little bit slow and stupid. It's not something you want to take before a sports game or a test. Be honest with your kid and direct with your kid instead of focusing on the who, what, when, where, and why. Education is the number one tool that you want to dictate to your children because they're going to have to think for themselves. They're going to have to decide if they're going to do it or if they're not. And I think a lot of addiction comes from parents on the immediate defense in that aspect of you can't hang out with this person anymore or you can't do this anymore because you're smoking dope or whatever. And that was my parents too. The immediate response was to get my kid away from who was doing it, who was providing it, but that wasn't the problem. There was other kids providing to that kid who was also just like me in a situation doing it for the first time. So sometimes as parents we judge harshly in that aspect and we don't consider. And the sex talk is the same way. You have to consider what is going to scare them and what is going to make them want to do it more. You have to be truthful, but it has to be age appropriate. I can't tell you what to say to your kid. You have to come up with that. But how you approach it is vital to when they come to you and why they come to you. If you have a female, I think it's more important to push when you're ready to have sex. I really want you to come forward to me because there is a doctor called an OBGYN, and you need to go get checked out and get put on birth control because I know you're going to have sex one day. Having sex isn't the issue. Make sure you're in love with someone, but at the same time, teach them the health and safety of it. Don't just be like, you can't have sex till you're married. All boys want is sex. That's very derogatory things and giving the female the wrong impression about what a relationship is and making them feel guilty about it and putting unrealistic expectations on it. Realistic expectations are they're going to have sex one day. Regardless of what age they decide to have sex, that's going to be their choice, not yours. We have to let that go. So educate. Teach them the proper way. I'm not going to keep you from your person if you tell me you're going to want to have sex. I just want to make sure you're safe, protected, that you know about STDs, that you have condoms, and that you're not going to get pregnant and screw up your life. Your kid will respect you and they will feel comfortable. And when you say something, own it. Like when I say I'm not going to yell at you, don't yell or they won't come back again. Keep that in mind.